Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to Pursuit of Knowledge. Another episode with you, inshallah, for the next hour. A live Q&A session on a very important topic. The topic today, inshallah, that we'll be discussing is learning and understanding Islam. A very wide topic, a very important topic, and a topic I'm sure we all want to know, get that right idea on how and why we should understand our deen correctly, inshallah. Today, alhamdulillah, I'm joined by a guest, and as always, throughout the program, you can give us a call on 0141 280 8779 is the number to call us on. And my guest today, alhamdulillah, is for all calling from all the way from the west end of Glasgow, is Sheikh Ridwan Muhammad. Sheikh Ridwan, as many of you know here locally in Glasgow, is a Sunni theologian and scholar. A graduate from Glasgow University in geopolitics and Arabic language in 1993. Thereon he travelled throughout the Islamic world studying under leading scholars and theologians from the various countries around the Islamic world. And he pursued the study in Turkey where he learned the language as well as that to some formal Islamic training. And then thereon, inshallah, went on to study in Syria and Damascus, particularly at the Mahad al-Fath, which is a very renowned college. Where he spent 6 years and alhamdulillah graduated with distinctions in all subjects, and alhamdulillah first in his class as well. In 2009 he co-founded the SOLAS Foundation, which focuses on quality and transparent religious consultancy in areas of Islamic ethics and education. He also is the author and education of more, everyone probably know more about it, is the I-Syllabus program here in Glasgow as well, alongside with Sheikh Amr Jamil. He and Sheikh Amr Jamil were also rewarded in the Religious Advocate of the Year Award at the British Museum Awards in 2014. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Ridwan is also an author of many articles as well as journals on various topics in the Islamic field as well. Alhamdulillah, as I said, he joins me on the line. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Ridwan.
Sorry, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the show.
Alhamdulillah. I've just transferred onto my phone and my laptop's not working.
Khair inshallah, khair inshallah.
Is this better? It's clearer?
We can hear you loud and clear, so I'm sure hopefully you can hear us likewise.
Alhamdulillah.
And always, as we do, inshallah, we invite our guest, inshallah, to speak on the topic very briefly about learning and understanding Islam. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Ridwan.
Jazakallah khair, jazak. So I didn't hear anything you said.
Sorry. Just if you can briefly introduce the topic. As I said, the topic is about learning and understanding Islam.
So I'm not hearing anything you're saying.
Sorry, we still have technical issues. Can you hear me now? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. I can hear that.
Can you hear me now? Good.
I get one word or 3 or 4. So I don't
sorry,
know what you're saying.
I was saying if you can do just a brief introduction to the topic of learning and understanding Islam.
So what I think you're asking is something, introductory comments about
please.
So,
yeah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the whole thing about knowledge is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obviously mentioned knowledge and learning in the Quran in many different ways. Probably the most important for me is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. The people that really can feel the presence of God, or they can have an awareness of Allah, or have real fear or trepidation in front of Allah, are the people that know Him. And so that's a way of actually, I think you could probably say it's a way of honouring people. It's a way of glorifying a specific group of people and lauding them because of a quality that they have, which is pursuing knowledge. And so it means that people that don't have knowledge or don't know Allah sufficiently well enough are excluded from that quality of being the people that know Allah the best and have the most awe of Allah and the most fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So knowledge essentially is there to connect us with Allah, but essentially it's also to do that in a way that's the most productive and the quickest way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So in the month of Ramadan, obviously people worship. People have schedules on how to worship and how many rak'at they do. and what kind of dhikr they do. But remember, all of the actions that we do are conditional upon having knowledge of something, knowing how to do something properly, knowing the balance between different things, knowing when to do certain things rather than other things. And one of the things that I just notice in Ramadan is generally that people, when they practice their faith, they maybe neglect things that if they had knowledge of, they would probably put more emphasis on. Because, acts of worship and devotion and taraweeh on the recitation of the Quran is no doubt a great blessing. But what is more important for a believer, if they have knowledge, is to understand that you could do all those actions, you could do all those acts of worship and devotion to Allah. But Allah has very clearly stated and has indicated in numerous Quranic texts and prophetic traditions is that you could do all those actions, but there could be barriers that stop them being accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only way you know that is by having access to the prophetic chain of knowledge which informs you of those things, such as things like breaking family ties, for example, things like being oppressive in your relationships to other people, being unjust to other people. All these things are what are called in Arabic mawani'. And so what's interesting about knowledge is it helps you to be more efficient and more intelligent in the way that you worship and you come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because essentially what it does is it stops you wasting a lot of time in things that are of no purpose, which is why Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said that, the seeking knowledge throughout the night is more beloved to me than 2 raka'at of prayer in the night. So in other words, he had this balance, he had this idea of the knowledge that you have can benefit so many people, whereas the worship that you do, you can only benefit yourself, and even then it's conditional upon you being sincere. So if you do, say, all night you do worship in Ramadan and there's no sincerity in that, and you're doing it for some other reason or whatever delusion that you have, essentially that is not getting, it's like putting money in the bank when you go to, and you put in an account that you don't know the number to. Yeah. Essentially there's no benefit to it. And so to worship without sincerity, or even to do things that are less productive and neglect those that are more productive is very unfortunate, which is why knowledge is such an important thing. This is why, even non-Muslim scholars that talk about Islam, when they talk about it, they always say it's probably the only civilization that was based first and foremost on knowledge and acquisition of knowledge and learning. And so it's sometimes slightly depressing that when you look at the figures of people that read in the Muslim world, in a per day, how much they read. If you look at the Western countries, how much do people read in a day? If you look at the educational establishments, but more specifically, what makes you cry is our religious institutions in the Middle East and the Muslim world usually only take in, people that have been rejected or their families feel that they cannot get into medical school or engineering or other places. So our own actions are of a nature where we have neglected ilm, we have, made it into some kind of superstitious occupation where you can just say anything. And the best example is in this COVID context is, it's been quite shocking the way that religious scholars have tended to not be on the kind of the front end of this and make decisions until governments tell them not to do certain things. Whereas the Sharia and fiqh and knowledge would very clearly tell you that you should be telling the governments that they should be locking down, not the other way around. So some of the kind of messages that were going out and doing the rounds about we'll stay open until the government forces us to stop only comes from a mindset which really, I think, has not really taken in Islamic knowledge properly, because it doesn't understand the most basic concepts of the priorities of Islamic law and knowledge, which is why the Prophet ﷺ, in a very famous hadith, in which in the Sahih collections, a person was traveling with other people, their companions, and one of them got injured while he was traveling. And one thing that happened is that he got injured in his head, and he got a very bad cut. And at night time, he had, he needed to do ghusl the next day, and he had a wet dream, he had to do ghusl. And so he asked the other companions, what should I do? And they said, well, in the Quran it says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ جُنُبًا فَاتَّحَّرُوا, if you are in a state of janaba, then you have to do a bath. So he said, I fear that if I do a bath, what's going to happen is that it will get infected, or it will become worse for me. And what happened is he took their advice, he did the bath, he got infected. Before he arrived in Madinah Munawwarah, he died, so he's buried on the way. And one of the companions who was with the group felt quite remorseful of that, and he mentioned it to the Prophet ﷺ. And he said, ﷺ said that قَتَلُوهُ, they killed him, قَاتَلَهُمُ اللَّهُ, may Allah kill them. And so, and the Prophet then said that if only they'd asked those people that knew, because the cure to ignorance is asking questions. And so knowledge is, one part of, say, talking, I think you asked about the benefits of knowledge or the blessings of knowledge. Part of the blessings is learning, but the other function and blessing of knowledge is to make sure that you don't do things that are counterproductive or dangerous for other people. And that is, in this day and age, that is more important. Like, it was Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said that we live in an age in which worship is better than knowledge, and there will come an age in which knowledge is far greater than worship. And the reason you see that is because knowledge is used and abused. The ignorant are the ones that hold sway, with Facebook and social media, and conspiracy theories do the rounds and all the rest of it. Yeah. All based on the fact that people have a small amount of knowledge, which seems to make them think that they have the ability to make decisions about everything, give fatwas, talk about politics, talk about economics, talk about medicine. And so knowledge is not just an issue for Islam, and the importance of it is not just an issue for Islam, it's actually an issue generally in humanity, that unless you're a specialist, or you have a reading, or you have an informed opinion on something, the Prophet said, "Min husn Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni," that from the beauty of a person's Islam is that they leave what is not of their concern. Yeah. So that is very, very important this day and age, rather than just making it some kind of fairy tale, trip to the Middle East to study. The reality is that knowledge has a very strong impact on earth, has a very empowering impact on people that learn, and the lack of it leads to so much corruption, so much destruction on earth that knowledge needs to be almost like an obligation. This is why in Islam you have this idea of fard ayn, which is obligatory knowledge, is individually for every single individual Muslim.
In light of that, I mean, talking about that path that people are going to will take to gain knowledge. I mean, where does that begin, and how should that begin for someone who is serious about learning their deen? Is that a case of just kind of going and opening books, or sitting with the scholars, or nowadays people going on the internet and various other means? But what's the approach? What's the mindset someone should have when they're thinking about gaining knowledge?
I think the mindset, the first thing is sincerity. So the first thing is why you're doing it. You have to be very clear on why you're doing it. Imam Ghazali talks about this in his famous book, O Beloved Son, and he talks, if your intention is to debate with people and to argue and to get into discussions, then woe to you. And if your aim is to kind of raise up the standard of the Prophet's teachings and benefit people through them. And then he said, good luck to you, that's the blessing is in that intention. First thing is that, and the second thing is to start from the basics, not to start from rocket science. If you want to become an astronaut or you want to become a physicist, you start with your ABC, you start with your alif bata, you start with all the basics, which means you make use of all the people that are around you in your locality before you even think of doing anything else. And Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi's advice on seeking a teacher is actually very important, because he has a number of points which he mentions, which is, the first thing is that they're known for their religiosity. In other words, they're known by people to be upright people, to be religious people, from what we see of them. And so that's a very important thing. The person you go to, whether it's a male or a female, they should be somebody who's held to be religiously scrupulous. In other words, they uphold the Sharia, and that's the thing they uphold. They don't uphold anything more important than the Sharia. The second thing is that he said that you should look at their proficiency, in other words, their ability to teach what you want to learn, which is quite simple, because if you want to go to somebody to study mathematics, and they're struggling with mathematics, there's no point going to study with mathematics. So basically find somebody who's proficient or good to your level in that specific science. And so that's the most important thing. And the last thing he says is that they don't engage in wrong actions openly. So Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi is basically saying that's where you start from, and once you finish that, you move on to the next person, until your locality, the town you're in, the city you're in, or the country you're in, no longer has the types of teachers that you need, and then you perhaps, if you feel the urge, you go further afield. But remember, everybody just needs to learn their basics. And as you know, Shoket, you'll know, having taught, you'll know that the basics can be learned here from local teachers very easily. And that means that when you're at the age of praying, you need to learn how to pray and do wudu. When you're at the age of puberty, you need to learn how to pay zakat. You need to do all these things. If you get married, you need to know the laws of marriage. If you're in business, you need to know the laws of business. Those are the things that you have to know right away. These are called fard ayn. And there's also a whole area of Islamic study which is called ilm al-hal, which is basically knowledge of what is immediately relevant to you.
Sure.
So again, that hadith, the beauty of a person's Islam is to leave what does not concern them, which means the beauty of Islam is in doing what concerns you. And it was the beauty of your Islam and practicing it and finding the benefit of Islam and the beauty of Islam and the real heartfelt, kind of nature of Islam is to do what concerns you. And if you do that, your spiritual life will be, very, very rich. But the way it becomes ill and becomes sick is when you start involving yourself in things that don't concern you. And you find people that, do that and do things that don't concern them, whether it's to do with knowledge or politics or science. You find that their intentions become totally, kind of compromised to the point that they forget even why they pray, why they fast. And their whole agenda is something completely different, which is quite negative.
Sure. We live in a time when obviously information is so accessible, so easily accessible now. So I mean, how important it is, or what importance is it to having a teacher or a guide to take you through that, i.e., gaining that knowledge, or is it okay just to go out there and start opening books and going on the net? I mean, what advice would you give?
My advice would be, if you have any question on Islam, Google it, and then you'll get your probably 120,000 results.
Yeah.
And if you've got the 4 days to plow through them, then you've got your answer, which is you don't. And the reality is, the reason you have to plow through them is that they're all giving different answers.
Yeah.
And to be honest, to filter through them, I mean, I could sit with somebody who says that they can have knowledge in Islam from the internet. I would volunteer to sit with them with a question and put it into the Google search or the engine, and let them talk me through, or let them talk me through what they understand. And I guarantee after one entry they will basically collapse, because they won't know who's written it, why they've written it, what authenticity it is, how trustworthy the person is. And so, Ibn Sirin says, this religion is a serious issue, so look at from whom you take your religion from. Yeah. So you have to be able to see and sit and know the person that you're learning from close quarters. In other words, if you have local people that people know about and they know their history in terms of where they've been and who their family is and what their motives are, that is somebody far more trustworthy than a person that has aliases on a Facebook site, or is a person that just uploads YouTube links. And so people end up idolizing people that never see, or they end up going on to online sites that they have no idea of understanding why they've been set up. And essentially that brings you back to the issue of trust. In day-to-day life, everything that we know is built on trust. The way that we work, the way that we educate ourselves, the way that we interact with people is all based on trust. And how can you trust something you've never experienced or never known from close quarters? Because what always happens is people that are apparently people we should trust, but we've never seen them, we then realize that they're not really people we should be trusting, and then it's probably too late to trust the people that we should be trusting. Yeah. And so, the thing not to do is to go and study medicine by yourself on Wikipedia. You can imagine trying to somebody's ill in your house and you think, well, we need to treat them, we can't afford the medicine, so we'll go into Wikipedia and we'll find out how to cure them. No one's going to do that. So why is it any different with religion? This seems very, very strange that when it comes to religion, everybody has their 2 pence worth to throw into the debate.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because nobody values that or respects that in any other area of expertise. So why is it in the case in religion?
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons why people do that is they think that the people that are teaching religion are not up to scratch. And their know-how is not, their know-how of worldly issues and things they talk about sometimes is the same. So to be honest, they have, a lot of people I speak to who are more secular-minded, they always complain about ulama and scholars and imams saying they're out of touch. And also they don't understand the intricacies of the world, and they sometimes make statements about things that they have no expertise in. And so that leads to them then saying, well, we can learn our religion ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so, it's one of these things that if are at least capable of going into studying, then obviously the kind of information they give out will be the least beneficial as well.
Sure. We're going to go for a quick ad break, inshallah. You're listening to Pursuit of Knowledge here on Ramadan TV, inshallah. So as I said, our guest is Sheikh Muhammad Ridwan. Today's topic is on learning and understanding Islam. So as I said, we'll be back after our short break. Assalamu alaikum, my name is Shoket Aksi, and inshallah I will be presenting a show here on Ramadan TV Scotland. This will be a live phone-in with a number. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Pursuit of Knowledge, and welcome back to our topic today, learning and understanding Islam. And alhamdulillah, I have with me a very special guest, Sheikh Ridwan Muhammad, who joins me online, inshallah. And as you know, with Pursuit of Knowledge, you can contact us anytime throughout the show. The telephone number to call in is 0141 280 8779. Sheikh Ridwan, assalamu alaikum, welcome back.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
On that same topic, as we were speaking before the break there, now somebody who does begin on this journey of knowledge, sometimes it does come to a point where when you are studying the various sciences and disciplines, you hear so many differences of opinion, so many different schools of thought, so many differences. I mean, how should one understand that? How should they manage all those different views and opinions that they go into?
So the important thing is that they should be very clear when they start off learning that the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very simple, it's very clear, it should be there for the benefit of mankind. So the whole purpose of learning is to make your life more blessed, is to make it more productive, is to make it more fulfilling as a human being. And so you shouldn't place too much emphasis on difference of opinion or who says what. Because essentially for yourself, what's important is you just need to know what you need to do in a specific situation. That's why having a teacher is such an important thing, that when you ask them, I've got to pay zakat, how much do I pay? They give you an answer. And because you trust them, you just act upon that. If they say, this is how you pray, you trust them on that. Because nobody is going to be honest, pick up a book of hadith, like Sahih Bukhari, and then open up and then learn how to pray from Sahih Bukhari. In the history of Islam, no one's ever tried to do that. The reason they haven't is because you can't. It's impossible to do that. And so everybody has to learn from a teacher. Even the people that, in the 1980s, 90s, used to run about saying you need to go to the Quran and Sunnah directly. They realized when they stopped saying that and just went to the Quran and Sunnah and read it, they realized it's not possible.
No.
And so all those people ended up turning back to, the fact that, Imam Malik, Abu Hanifa, they all collected the opinions of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions and the followers of the companions. They basically just presented it and classified it into sections so that we could read what the early companions did and said and had opinions on. So one of the things is that the opinions are there, and essentially it is part of God's mercy that He allows different opinions to exist, because, the Prophet intentionally did not make things black and white. So we know that in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, we have numerous examples. The very famous example is Bani Qurayza, where the Prophet ﷺ sent some of all the companions, he sent them to this specific tribe. And he said, don't pray Asr until you reach the tribe. And then what happened is, when they were going to that specific tribe, the time for Asr arrived, and they felt that if they didn't pray, they would miss the prayer. So some of them actually did not do what the Prophet said, which is wait till you get to there to pray Dhuhr, Asr. because they felt they might have lost it. And so they prayed on the way, and some of them did what the Prophet said, it is they delayed their prayer until they got to the habitation of Bani Qurayza. And when the Prophet heard about it, he said, you have both acted correctly. In other words, that's a very clear indication. The Prophet vindicated and acknowledged that both opinions became correct. And the Prophet could have easily have said, difference of opinion is from shaitan, and how dare you break the ummah and all the rest of it, which is what people do nowadays. You know, that is right from the source of the Sunnah of the Prophet, that difference of opinion essentially should not stop us from, you know, interacting as a community. And also, not, again, that hadith come to mind again, from the perfection of a person's faith is leaving aside what does not concern them. Difference of opinion does not concern you until you need an opinion that is going to help you, that you find difficulty in, you know, if you find difficulty applying one opinion, then difference of opinion is for you is a mercy, because you can ask and say, I'm finding it difficult, you know, to pray in this way, or to give zakat in this way, or to fast in this way. Is there any other opinion? And then a scholar will say, yes, there is, this will help you. So that's the whole point of difference of opinion. The Prophet made, you know, laxity and kind of breadth in our religion to make it easy for us, and to make it easy for us to focus on what's important, which is really to focus on Allah and to focus on sincerity towards God. These other things are not really that important to our religious faith at all. Sure. It's important for scholars, but not for other people.
Sure. Another question I have here is that when learning or understanding Islamic knowledge, sometimes we put a big separation between that in sciences like philosophy, psychology, chemistry, medicine, whatever it may be. Should we separate them, the two, or is it a case of whereby, you know, they do emerge together at some point?
I mean, the thing about those specific disciplines like medicine or philosophy, they all in some way impact and are relevant to religious studies. So, you know, sometimes you should at least know enough of them not to say things about natural science or medicine or knowledge that are nonsensical. So a religious scholar or somebody learning Islam should know enough about natural sciences not to make glaring mistakes about what the world is like. Yeah. And so from that perspective, we shouldn't separate them. But from the other perspective, there is an honor in religious knowledge and, you know, studying of religious sciences, which is important to keep in mind, because it doesn't just teach you how to make use of the world, but also teaches you how to live in the world in a way that's moral and ethical. And so that is very important. But, you know, it depends on, you know, if you get your basic Islamic knowledge, then obviously you need to pursue other sciences, other areas of understanding, so that you can become a human citizen of the world, you can build a civilization, and essentially you can facilitate life for people on earth. This is why the Prophet said that خَيْرُكُمْ أَنْفَعُكُمْ لِلنَّاسِ, the best of you is the one that's most helpful and beneficial to other people. And the way you're beneficial is, first of all, by teaching religious sciences, by making sure people don't waste their religious actions, as I said before. The second way is to help them live in a way that is easy for them, in a way that is less stressful for them, alleviates harm, alleviates poverty, and creates progress in terms of how people do things. So those are all things that are important. So, you know, studying those sciences is actually very important as well.
Okay. And that idea of whereby, you know, like yourself and others who have gone away to study Islam in a foreign land or an Islamic country, would you recommend that, or is there now enough sufficient resources in English here in the UK or in the West generally?
I think the problem with going abroad is, you know, when myself and other people studied abroad, is that the opportunities probably were there more so because of the safety in the Middle East and the Muslim world, which I think now is non-existent. If you think of most Muslim countries, the instability that's there, and the poverty and you know, that kind of insecurity that's there, means that, you know, it's really a no-go zone for most countries. And so there's so much progress happened in the West, in Britain and America, in terms of educational institutions, like Zaytuna College in America, or the Cambridge College, headed by Abdul Hakim Murad in Cambridge, for example. These are places that, you know, if you want to, you know, aspire to a long-term study of Islam, those are the kind of places I would definitely recommend people going to, because they're learning religious sciences, but in as much as they're relevant to what people's needs are right now, which is a whole problem, I think, with just traditional seminaries and madrasas, is that they don't really equip the graduates to really make any impact in society. And so the people that do graduate have to then re-skill themselves by doing all that work themselves, by bringing the religious knowledge and making it of relevance, whereas in the past it wasn't of relevance. And so, you know, there is places here, and I think we should be supporting them because of the fact that it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of manpower and resources to build up these kind of institutions. And to be honest, we should be the people, if you have children or relatives that wanting to learn, those are the kind of places you should be supporting by donating to, or you know, by sending people to study at, and then, you know, creating the kind of the alumni that then spread the message of what it's doing. So Cambridge Muslim College obviously had a one-year diploma, and a lot of people who graduated from seminaries and madrasas went to that and benefited a lot. And you see the difference between those people and the people that just went straight out of madrasa into a mosque. Yeah. Massive difference. It's the same types of people, same quality of education, but the difference, because the mindset is such that those people, you know, really are making an impact in the community with non-Muslims and Muslims as well. That shows you that, you know, we need to build up our own institutions, and that means really people shouldn't be going abroad to study. Yeah.
I'm going to shift the topic, and we've had a lot of questions from viewers and listeners in regards to obviously the Eid coming up. Now, obviously, as we know, we're in lockdown. In fact, Scotland has extended the lockdown over and above England. So we're definitely in lockdown when it comes to Eid here in Scotland. What advice would you give regards to the community, particularly obviously the Eid prayer, because that's a big one everybody, you know, kind of looks forward to when it comes to Eid. And at the same time, obviously that whole thing about visiting friends and family. As you spoke about it earlier, you know, it's government advice. So Islamically, how should we look at that, and how should we pursue that on the day of Eid itself?
Yeah, so the important thing is here is, you know, the issue of Eid, praying Eid and celebrating Eid and marking Eid is very important. And this is what I said at the beginning, the scholars should be making and dictating the agenda, not the other way around, in terms of governments having to almost force. I mean, I feel that is how it's happening in the UK, is that the government and its policies have been the pivotal factor in making Muslim scholars and organizations make their own steps into safeguarding people's health. Whereas I think that the Islamic legal perspective would have been the one that should have dictated to the government that they should be closing up things much earlier. And that is quite, you know, kind of disconcerting and problematic. So it means that the advice that we're given by the government is has a very, very strong basis in Islamic law. It has a very, very strong basis in fiqh. And it has very, very strong basis in Quran and Sunnah. That's the bottom line is the Prophet Sunnah has at least 4 hadith that are very clear about reducing as much as possible, as much as they could at that time, contagion and the spread of a contagious disease, especially when we now know the contagious nature of COVID. And I was reading a report a couple of days ago about the fact that COVID is not the R number, which is how many people it reaches out to and infects, is probably higher than what they, you know, consider to be the case in the worst case scenario. So it means that we need to be extra cautious. And it was family gatherings, you know, in terms of what the government has indicated that will lead to higher infection rates, should be adhered to very strictly as a religious principle, not as a, you know, public health principle. And I think Muslims should be very aware that if they're fasting for Allah, they're also adhering to those types of rules, because essentially the Sharia and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to adhere to that kind of lockdown because of the safety and health of people that you love, essentially. And the other thing is about celebrating Eid. Obviously, the day of Eid is the day that you wake up. Eid al-Fitr is the day you wake up and you have something to eat. Yeah. And so it's that strange day when you've had 30 days of fasting, and all of a sudden you wake up and you can actually eat while the sun is in the sky. Yeah. And so we feel this exhilaration. So that should be continued. The continuation of getting up and your siblings shouting for you to use the bathroom and have your shower, that should continue. The whole thing of wearing your clothes the day before should continue. All the issues of celebrating and marking it, Eid al-Fitr, which is essentially marking that, should continue. The day is the day of Eid al-Fitr. The prayer is really there to mark it. You know, the prayer is there just to have 10, 15 minutes in the day where you collectively come together. but the day of Eid is still the day of Eid. It's still Eid al-Fitr. The only thing that will be missing is that you cannot congregate in a masjid. And so, in terms of the congregation itself, different schools have different opinions, but essentially, you do not congregate in a way, whether it's with your own family who are extended, who come to your house to pray Eid or visit, or if it's to do with, just a friend or friend coming across and then just having an impromptu Eid prayer. That's not acceptable Islamically at all. Leave aside the fact that it's illegal, but also it's against health and safety of the current conflict, the current situation we're in. So in terms of the fiqh of it, it's actually quite interesting because you talked about difference of opinion. In these kind of issues where, Imam al-Shafi'i said that al-amru idha daqat tasa'. If something becomes difficult, you can allow people to have some kind of ease and facility, and you can make things easier for people. And so in this kind of situation, people are free to, perhaps take an opinion from another school of law that they've never even heard of before, if it makes them feel that their Ramadan has come to an end and it's being marked by a special prayer. So for example, the most accessible opinion would be the Shafi'i opinion, which allows you to pray Eid with your family in your house if you miss the Eid prayer. And in fact, even if you don't miss it, you could still, according to their school, presumably pray the Eid prayer at home. And so if the issue is you feel that you've not had Eid unless you prayed the Eid prayer, you can just pray the 2 rak'at of Eid with the extra takbirat. If you look at the Shafi'i school with the 7 or 8 extra takbirat, that would be perfectly okay. Now, with the other schools, like the Hanafi school, which is majority school in Scotland in terms of Muslims, they have this idea that the Eid is like the Jum'ah prayer. So if it's not been specifically sanctioned to be established and allowed, then there's no Jum'ah prayer, and then also there's no Eid prayer. And so therefore, basically, if there's no Eid prayer in the mosque, there's no Eid prayer at the house. And if there's no Eid prayer in the house, they say what you can do is you can pray nafil prayer. You can just do what we call essentially Salat al-Duha, which is the early morning prayer, which is you roughly do it after sunrise by about an hour or something. That prayer can be prayed either in 2 cycles or 4 cycles, but it's duha. So you just make the intention of duha. You should be doing that. People of our scholars used to recommend people do it. The Prophet did it, and he recommended it. He even did it when he conquered Mecca al-Mukarramah. So all you do is that, and then you could just take that to be something that takes the place of your Eid in terms of a special prayer that you've done. In the Maliki school, there's no real concept like the Hanafi school of praying at home if you missed Eid. Leave aside the fact that if there's no Eid, then the Maliki school wouldn't allow you to pray Eid in the house because there's no Eid in the mosque. So in that situation, the same thing, you just pray an extra prayer. But the most important thing here is the things that we can't do face-to-face, we should try and see how we can do it virtually. People are living virtually. I'm speaking to you virtually. Technology has moved to the point that you could... I was speaking to my mum, I was actually joking with her. I was saying to her, you can't meet your siblings and my aunts and uncles in Glasgow, even though they live right around the block, as you know. I said, why don't you put the drama on, the Pakistani TV drama on, and you all have the same drama on at the same time, and get the food out and FaceTime each other with 10 people on the screen. I'll put it on the TV, and you can just sit for a couple of hours just having food and chit-chatting while watching a drama, which is what they always do anyway. So there's ways that our elderly, we need to look after our elderly as well. So I think there's ways, if we just take a bit of time out, we look at how technology works, include our elderly people into this equation. Inshallah, the Eid is a special Eid, inshallah. But it'll be special if you save lives. That's the most important thing. When the Prophet said they killed him, may Allah kill them, he was talking about companions that gave a fatwa that was wrong. And essentially that comes to mind when I think of people saying, well, we'll sneak a cheeky Eid in, prayer in somewhere, or not at all. And the far right, as you know, are just waiting for Muslims to make these soundings that we should be opening the mosques up early. So inshallah, we should be entertain that at all.
Inshallah khair. Sheikh Ridwan, Jazakallah khair for your time, inshallah. Inshallah, hopefully we'll get to see you again quite soon. But thank you very much for today. We've benefited much from yourself, inshallah. So as I said, Jazakallah khair once again to Ridwan, Sheikh Ridwan, for that. And just to kind of finish up on, also to remember, inshallah, that Ramadan TV will be continuing right through the lockdown as well. We'll continue beyond Ramadan, inshallah. So inshallah, hopefully we'll bring you some more programs throughout the rest of the year, inshallah. Hopefully, even after the lockdown, inshallah. So, but in the meantime, as I said, we will continue. And as always, inshallah, we'd love feedback from yourselves about the shows, particularly myself, obviously related to Pursuit of Knowledge. Any feedback would be great. You can get us on ramadantv.co.uk and leave any feedback there, inshallah, in regards to the shows that you've been watching. And we're always, happy to hear more from yourselves in regards to anything that we can improve on. But Jazakallah khair for yourselves for listening. Inshallah, tomorrow I'll be back with a very special guest, Brother Shoket, another Shoket of the world. He will be joining us, inshallah, talking about roles and responsibilities of mosques and Islamic centres. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.